And we are back, listening to some new bumper music here from Kyle, playing the keyboard and some funky bass.
Yes, sir.
It's good shit.
Okay.
So like I was saying at the end of the last segment, I was not able to pull up Gantenbrink's CAD drawings, which I wish I could have, because I wanted to see the details about, you know, the minute details about the various, not just where the doors are, but like, you know, the stuff that the anomalies he was finding. It, like, for number one, the shifting of various blocks, implying that there are static forces elsewhere in the building that aren't explained by any known chambers. What else? The various, like the vertical joints or places where a shaft block and where both of the shaft blocks into the same place, which doesn't, in other places they're usually staggered.
Yeah.
So various places where static forces were being moved around by the pyramid builders, but we're in this tiny, like, I was talking to the Stash about this, right? So I, of course, after doing the episode, I'm like, Stash, okay, you know, like what, and we were discussing about how it's sort of like imagine a skyscraper is totally buried, you know, just imagine a skyscraper that's like somehow it's completely buried under sediment. And so you don't have any access to the building at all, but you manage to get into one of the air vents and you're sending a robot through the air vent.
Yeah.
Of this thing, and like there's all this stuff going on in the building around the air vent, but you have to infer things by the way the air vent is constructed, right? Sort of like that. Or if you're running a robot in between the walls of a house, right? So you're running it along, and you're like, okay, wait a minute, what? You know, I see a stud at every 24 inches, and then suddenly there's this big thick thing, and you're like, okay, so that implies that there's something load bearing here, or something is maybe something is hung on the wall on the outside that's attached to this thing that we see, but you have to infer it, right? Like you were saying in that episode that the shafts provide you a sort of a map if you're able to.
Right, to deduce what this.
Right.
Right.
And so Gantenbrink is studying all this stuff, and like I wasn't able to pull up the CAD drawings, but looking at his, you know, basic illustrations, it doesn't have all the details in it, but looking at the basic illustrations, the stuff that he was finding in the pyramid, at least the northern shaft, you know, well, he didn't find the northern door, the one that actually goes to over the Grand Gallery. He wasn't able to turn.
And unlike certain British Egyptologists, if I was in an attic and I was crawling around and I saw a board that had something on the side of it that said, like, with a little piece of plastic, it said General E, I wouldn't be like, that's the guy who built this house.
Yeah,
whatever was after E was covered up by some other thing or sanded off of there. Ha! Look, I've discovered in the attic the name of the person who built the pyramid.
Yeah,
the house was General E.
Yeah, it was General E. I also wanted to say to anyone who was. I've seen this reaction sometimes to some of Gantenbrink's data about shifted blocks and various incomplete things and other quote unquote shoddy work that, you know, that can sort of disappoint people who have this sort of picture of the pyramid as being this beautifully perfect thing. Well, there are Johnsons on every job.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you're one of them.
Right. Johnson is a floating name. It's whoever just really fucked up that job they're supposed to do. That's the Johnson. And like, you're not always, you know, the same guy isn't always, well, sometimes the Johnson is the same guy.
Yeah.
But basically the point is that every construction project has errors in it. If it was perfect, it wouldn't be human, right? Like if it was just perfect in every aspect, you would be like, it would be difficult. That would be very strange. But the fact that it has, you could still see the beauty of the overall design and the mind. Like Gantenbrink talked about, he was very at home with what he saw as the engineering minds of the people who built this structure.
Right.
Right. And he's not disturbed by, shifting or shoddy work in this. He called it a Monday morning block, which is basically the same thing as saying like Johnson did this.
It's a Johnson block.
It's a Johnson block, right?
Because sometimes on Monday morning, you are Johnson.
That's right. So any building has this, like if you're crawling around between the walls, and you're looking at stuff, you're going to find, just think of a house. You're going to find nails that miss the stud, things, small errors that doesn't take away from the overall construction project or the conception of it. In other words,
ever wonder why that one light bulb in your closet keeps blowing, and then you're crawling through the attic one day, and one of those nails
goes right
going right through that wire,
power cord for that light,
and there's a big black mark on that wire. And occasionally, for whatever reason, the house shifts and it shorts out, and your light bulb blows.
And your light bulb blows. Yeah, Johnson put that nail in.
That's right.
So don't let the errors that we're seeing in these interior spaces that were never intended to be looked at by people, don't let that discourage you from the idea that the pyramid is a beautiful thing, because it is.
Yeah.
It's just that there are Johnsons on every job.
Yeah, and especially a job of that scale.
Yeah.
You're going to have many, 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 many Johnsons and many, 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 many Monday blocks.
Right.
It's just the nature.
Johnson can make a lot of small mistakes in a building project that takes 20 years to complete.
Right.
Right. You got a lot of time for Johnson to do some bad stuff.
That's right. Yep. And 13 acres is a very hard area to
micromanage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Sometimes Johnson's not going to be being watched by his supervisor.
That's right. Johnson always seems to like the other side of the pyramid that I'm on. If I'm working on the west side of the pyramid, Johnson always seems to go work on the east side of the pyramid.
Yeah. I love the hammerstone thing. Hey, Johnson, where's your hammerstone? God dang it, Johnson, go get your fucking hammerstone. He's gone for 3 hours. He's trying to find a new one, trying to steal one from somebody.
Yep. So I have this the sort of theoretical model in my mind that I'm building of this pyramid now since the Upaut. The time. Okay, so I hit record.
Full disclosure.
And I only recorded myself. My microphone was the only thing turned on, and so we went through 16 minutes. We started the timer, and then I realized 16 minutes later, I'm the only one you guys are hearing. So we deleted that, and we started over. This is the only time we make edits.
Yeah. Is when there's a serious error.
There's a really serious error.
That can't be corrected, yeah. So my mic was not on, so I would have been audible, but barely. It would have sounded like I was on the other side of the room from my mic.
It would have sounded bad.
So we had to start over, and I forgot to start over the 30-minute sand timer that we have here. So the sands of time are inaccurate. We're just going to have to let it run out and whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, sorry.
I've got this other fancy digital clock.
Yeah. It's not as cool as the sands of time.
my theoretical model of the pyramid current stage right now with all of this Gantenbrink.
Yeah, up to 2002. We're up to the Scan Pyramids project. Yeah,
Scan Pyramids. So now, like, the Scan Pyramids project shows a void above the Grand Gallery, and we're talking about this possibility of a smaller pyramid that was designed for the Queen's Chamber to be the main chamber, and the shafts go to the exterior, which were cased, and then this new pyramid was built on top. So we've got this main entrance, the descending passageway, which almost seems to be carved through these blocks. Like, I've heard it said it carved through the blocks, as though they built it all and then they cut the passage, or that the passage was built in. I don't know.
The descending passage?
Yeah. It was like cut through.
I know that the entrance that the tourists use is the one that was cut into the side of the pyramid.
There's one that's cut in, and then you can see where, if you look at certain pictures of where they actually pulled the stone away from the outside, this crazy angled 45s of staggered joints going up. It's beautiful.
Right.
This construction behind this crazy wall behind this other completely different angle at right angles to those angles. It's it's crazy looking. So you've got the descending passage that goes all the way through. So the new model would be this bigger exterior pyramid was built, and they opened the initial passage that entered the smaller one and modeled the new shaft to match it exactly and go all the way down into the subterranean chamber, and then cleverly cover the ascending passageway with a movable stone or whatever, however it was done.
Rotating prism stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they put the giant granite plugs in there for whatever reason, basically to sort of close it off. But that leads to the Grand Gallery, right? Which I was imagining. There's another pyramid that I saw on the Pyramid Code, which is on Netflix, I believe. That's a series. Great series. Go watch it.
Yeah.
The lady in there, one of the hosts, is visiting this other pyramid, and I can't remember what the name of it is, Watcher. But it's this other pyramid in the Pyramid Code. It's probably going to be really hard for you to find.
Yeah.
But it has an open, like the Grand Gallery, but it's this open trough. Like the pyramid was built, and the ascending passage, essentially, or descending passage, is completely open all the way to the sky.
Yeah.
So I was imagining that perhaps the initial pyramid had something like that in the Grand Gallery, and they corbelled this. They made a corbelled ceiling over the top of that to cover it, and then built the exterior pyramid on top of that, and perhaps made a new entrance up higher, as you said that the Scan Pyramids project may have detected.
Yeah.
Above the now existing entrance that leads into another similar type Grand Gallery.
Yeah.
That matches, because you can see that in the King's Chamber they did something very similar. They made a King's Chamber like the Queen's Chamber, slightly bigger.
Right.
They made shafts like the Queen's Chamber shafts. Of course, they bent and went in different directions. They were still open for whatever reason, but it's almost like they were honoring the initial design of the pyramid.
I got you. Yeah. I agree with that. And like, I was thinking about this when we were talking about this, I don't know, last week after doing the podcast. We were talking about how we also know that despite the fact that the entire Giza Plateau was flattened to within a 1/4 inch tolerance in any direction you care to measure or whatever, that the Great Pyramid itself was built on a mound.
Right. They didn't flatten that one.
Right. Why didn't they flatten that? Like, you know, my idea is that the mound is in a very ancient tell. Mm-hmm. So that the people who built what we are now calling the smaller Queen's Pyramid, right? The Queen's Pyramid.
Yeah.
They built that on top of a very ancient tell that is the rubble or the mound of an even older construction that had the descending passage and the subterranean chamber in it. So somebody builds a pyramid or some sort of maybe a tower type or a stepped pyramid type structure on top of that. And then later somebody comes along and builds the Great Pyramid structure on top of that.
Right.
And that kind of coincides with my idea and not mine, but the idea that people have put forward that I sort of agree with, that there are 3 stages of construction seen in these megalithic places around the world, like in Peru, that guy and his son, I can't remember, Jesus Gamara, who talks about, you know, these 3 levels of these 3 different eras of construction, the oldest being the most massive and ancient, and then somebody came along later and was still building amazingly, but it's a different style, still megalithic, still polygonal and crazy, but not as big or as beautiful or as amazing as the original one. And then later on you have the Inca. So like there's multiple stages of construction visible at Giza in various different, not just the pyramids, but on these, like, so if you look at the Sphinx temple, there's definitely at least 2 stages of construction there.
Right.
And then the plateau itself is flattened, but then there's places where it was eroded out and they put basalt on top of that.
Similarly, they did it.
The pyramid of Menkaure is sheathed in granite that looks just like stuff you find in Peru that has the same knobs.
Right.
You know? Okay. So like the idea that there's multiple levels of construction of the Great Pyramid itself is not.
Those are the Shamir props. They put some rough, crappy stone up there. They prop it up with some boards, and then they hit it with the Shamir.
Hit it with the Shamir and just melts it into this beautiful glob. Yeah,
that's right.
Fits
and it leaves
perfectly.
these little knobs on it where the logs were holding it in place. Those are the Shamir knobs.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah. So I have another sort of conflicting idea that I like as well. I like what you're saying, but there's this other idea that I like. Well, but the theory,
awesome
the idea.
What I'm saying is badass.
Yeah, and I like it. I like that. Of course I like it.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I didn't like it, it wouldn't be badass. So
you're right.
Watcher's not having any luck looking up that pyramid. So I'll have to actually go watch that show to find out what that pyramid was. And I actually told myself I was going to look into that pyramid more, but I haven't done it. So fail.
It's not the one that they call the incomplete pyramid.
I don't think
the one
so.
that Christopher Dunn and
that I know of.
David Hatcher Childress go down into. That's open to the sky.
Maybe it is.
Okay.
I just don't know. She named it.
Okay.
So
all right.
I don't know what it was. I'll have to watch it again. Pyramid Code. Anyway, this other idea that I also like is like the utilitarian idea, like that these things were necessary. The shafts were necessary for some function.
Right.
It wasn't soul shafts that are just like, oh yeah, we'll dig them for a while and then we'll block them off because you're done.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think they were burying anybody in there, so there was utility to whatever they were doing. Right. So I think again that if they had this original smaller pyramid and there were these shafts in there, and then they built the large one, they also needed shafts again because they were covering up the old ones that were no longer in use. That sort of conflicts with the idea that this mound underneath was sort of a quote unquote sacred site. Perhaps the mound, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That like it only conflicts in the way that if there was utility in the site itself, that perhaps they would have, instead of leaving this mound there when they're going to clear the whole plateau, maybe they revered it in some way. Like,
that's what I mean, yeah.
Oh, well, this was an ancient power plant that exploded and fell down. Well, we're going to keep all the rubble of the ancient power plant because we revere the people who built it first, and we're going to build the second one.
Well, and in the ancient Egyptians' accounts of their own histories, they have 3 stages of the civilization.
Yeah,
First, they're ruled by the gods.
It just seems like if you were an engineer and your plan was to build a functioning whatever, that you would try to optimize the starting point. And starting on a pile of rubble is difficult and hard to say how stable is this pile of rubble.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's why it conflicts a little bit.
Yeah, I see what you mean there.
So perhaps the mound.
What I'm saying is, well, what I would say
natural.
It could be, but they would still have to have a reason for leaving it there.
Exactly. But it makes more sense to me to leave a natural formation if you are doing something that requires whatever the feature was in the ground in the area at first, and you're like, well, let's not disturb that at all because it works for our purposes.
Right.
Whereas if it was a pile of rubble, that would be a little bit more difficult to imagine that, you know, your engineer is going to say, let's not, maybe all the blocks were like radioactive. And they're like, we'll use that power.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Well, I guess one of the possible ways of looking at that is that the later civilizations that came and built on top of it were not building a, or whatever the function was not that kind of function. In other words, that like, I guess what I would look at it is if the dynastic Egyptians, even the Old Kingdom guys, came along and did something like Khufu. Let's just say Khufu did have something to do with building something in the pyramid area, and you do see these in legends, like was it Tutmosis who was there's some legend. I guess it came from one of the stelae beneath the Sphinx that he fell asleep there.
Yeah,
and then has the dream. And the Sphinx is like, I'm covered in sand. Come on, help me out here, guy, and I'll make you pharaoh, right? And then he does all that. He brings this whole massive workforce to the plateau, cleans everything up, and he becomes pharaoh, right?
Yeah. He uncovers the Sphinx.
Right. There's this implication that they are dealing with something that they know is ancient, but they don't know what it was really, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that the final structure that we're looking at now, if it was a casing over an older structure that was in itself a building over something even older, that the original intent has long been lost.
Right. So, yeah.
And in their
That's
own...
why I'm saying the two ideas sort of conflict, right? Like, I can't have the quote unquote third stage of the pyramid being some like engineering feat to serve a certain purpose in terms of power or whatever, some great thing that will benefit the society as a whole.
Yeah.
If that's the case, right? That they're not going to do that, or it's extremely hard to do that, and it's a mystery why they would do that.
Right.
Perhaps if the stage 2 The Queen's Chamber Pyramid was already done that way for whatever reason that they decided to do it. Of course, stage 3, they're like, we're not going to tear down that massive pyramid to build a bigger one. We're going to just build on top.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine that this mound underneath was originally decided to be preserved if there was supposed to be some... Unless they were just so ridiculously awesome at engineering, which they obviously were.
Yeah.
They were like, let's leave it for antiquity. Or like for not antiquity, for posterity purposes. And let's just build on top because it's easy for us.
Right.
You know, to build a stable pyramid that's not going to collapse right on top of this pile of rubble.
Right.
In which case, they are far more awesome engineers than, you know, even... Anyway, that's totally possible. Because
is that right? Zawet El Arian? You think that's right? Because if that is the
Pyramid of Baca. Probably, dude. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know what it is, and I have to check.
Okay, because if that's right...
So what Watchers put up is unfinished northern pyramid of Zawet El Arian, also known as Pyramid of Baca.
Right.
That's probably it.
That is the one that I have the 40-page, whatever, the dissertation that guy wrote on, that he says it's not, he's like, I don't think this was ever a pyramid. It's that it digs down into the ground, has the big staircase, and then there's a huge, massive construction in it, and then the floor of it is like this weird jigsaw puzzle that if you don't know which blocks to pull out, you can't do it. It's because they all interlock in this certain way. I think that's the one that, he called it the, I can't remember what he called it, but Zawiyat El Aran. It's on the Giza Plateau, but on the other side. Yeah.
It's a total freaking mystery. I mean, it's just...
There's no pyramid there. It's dug down into the ground. There's no, but they think that it was an unfinished quote unquote pyramid because it has a retaining wall.
Okay.
But there's no pyramid whatsoever.
A socle?
Yeah. Well, there's an actual...
They built the socle, but they didn't put the pyramid.
There's an actual wall that goes all the way around it, but it's just a giant hole in the ground. That's, that somebody cut
this trough down in there.
It down, and like he analyzes the walls and shows you how there's parts where the wall obviously eroded away, and somebody much later came along and replaced that corner with a block from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it has this big...
That's it, Watcher, you found it.
That's it, yeah.
That's got to be it. So it's not a pyramid, but they call it a pyramid.
Right, they call it the unfinished pyramid because their idea is that they dug the descending passage in the subterranean chamber, and then they built the pyramid on top of that.
Right.
And that's what they think this looks like, except that it's enormous. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. Like, building a pyramid over top of this huge hole in the ground would have been a true engineering feat. So,
as all the pyramids are. So.
Yeah, but this one's is really huge.
You don't know how big that other freaking opening in the pyramid. We're talking about it. So.
You're right, I don't.
These guys are freaking awesome. They were not slaves in butt flaps.
That's right.
With copper chisels and stone hammers. Johnson.
Okay, so I have one more article here from the Daily Grail. What time we got?
We're getting up there.
Okay, so
couple
I'll
more
do
minutes.
This, I'll
couple
do this
minutes.
on the next.
So yeah, I think it's all just... It's so fascinating. I'm glad to hear that the Scan Pyramids project is overcoming the Skirp derps.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they did the multiple confirmation analyses of different tests and having other people unconnected with it and analyze the data that they got. So,
and what a brilliant idea.
Muons.
A brilliant idea. Muons.
I love the description, and I'm describing the way the plates are all stacked up, and you're like, these nerds, they're like, just like, what is that over in the corner? Just don't touch that thing. I don't know what it is, but don't touch it. Nerds are doing something with that. Whatever those are. Because it's got to be down there for like 9 months.
Right.
They just don't touch it. What is it? I don't know. But nerds are doing something.
Yes, nerds are doing something. So stay away from it.
Stay away from it.
Don't even look at it for too long.
Why will that mess it up? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't want it to.
Other nerds told me about things that happen with random number generators when you look at them. So just don't look at it.
Don't even think about it. Stop thinking about it. Pink elephants. Pink elephants.
Doorknob.
Doorknob. Yeah. So real quick, I was thinking of the idea, like, there are these sort of esoteric ideas that the pyramid was some sort of enlightenment generator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a box you can go lay in here, and it will just your mind.
Blow your fucking mind. That's right. So imagine if there's multiple levels to the enlightenment stage, right? So you, as an initiate, you're brought in, the Hierophant is in the pyramid, and he leads you in the dark, or you have to make your way, like knowing all this esoteric information, you have to go into the pyramid, and you, in the dark, you have to make your way to the king's chamber, right? Passing all these tests in the underworld or whatever it is.
And not getting crushed by blocks.
Right. You have to rotate things, and you have to know what to do, and based on these ancient stories. Then you get into the king's chamber, and you begin to, I don't know, you lay down in the box or whatever it is that you're doing, and you're doing some sort of remote viewing, and you're sending your remote viewing self, whatever that is, the consciousness, throughout the shafts that are in the walls, right?
Yeah.
Then when you graduate to the next level, you're
There's
down
got to
to
be two.
What?
There's got to be two shafts.
Yeah, because one side's got to be your body spirit.
That's right.
The other one has to be your mind spirit. But then eventually, when you graduate to the next level, then you're down in the queen's chamber, where there are no apparent shafts, and yet now that you've learned to do it from the guiding starlight or whatever it is from the shafts that exit of the king's chamber, now you're able to do it into these hidden shafts and get into the completely closed off hidden chambers using just your remote viewing mind self, whatever it is.
Oh, that's cool.
That the shafts themselves were meant to guide the consciousness of the person in the chamber to the hidden chambers.
Yeah, because somehow you could sense the difficulty in traveling through the stone.
Right.
Cold stone.
So
the other
the shaft leads you up to the, and that's why there's a seal there.
And that's why it's so perfectly aligned to north and south.
Yeah.
Like not the magnetic north and south, but the actual rotation, like the axis of rotation. Because there's an exact centrifugal force that you might be able to feel.
Yeah.
And so you would know what direction you were facing.
The Watcher says there's two shafts because one's exit only and the other one's entrance only.
Oh, okay.
If they aren't one way, you have head-on soul collisions, and that can get real messy.
Oh, yeah, that's not good. Washer is an EMT, so he would know about this.
All right. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back for the final segment.
Buried in a pyramid just like everybody else. I want my tombstone to read, I was not buried in a pyramid just like all the other badasses. Just kidding.
Yeah. This is not a pyramid.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? So in the Watcher's job of doing strange math for us for this show, he pointed out to us recently that as of episode 84, we have now published enough audio for you to listen to Snake Bros 7 days straight for 24 hours a day. That's pretty awesome, I gotta admit.
Yep.
It's pretty awesome. Thinking about that, that's
You might have 30% brain expansion after you're done, and you also will be possibly dead.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
This cadaver has quite a large brain.
He must have been listening to Snake Bros 7 days straight. All right. Final article here from the Daily Grail, not Daily Mail, dailygrail.com. Researcher suggests secret pyramid chamber might hold a meteorite throne. Is there a throne made from meteorites hidden in a secret chamber of the Great Pyramid? That is the headline that made worldwide news over the weekend, with stories in the Daily Mail, Russia Today, and other major media outlets. This story is based on a paper uploaded to rxiv.org in November 2017, titled "A Possible Explanation of the Void Discovered in the Pyramid of Khufu on the Basis of the Pyramid Texts" by Italian archaeoastronomer Giulio Magli. It should be noted that Magli is certainly not averse to putting forward rather speculative theories into the public sphere. We have covered a number of them on the previously here on the Grail, such as Machu Picchu, a map of the cosmos, astronomical alignments at Göbekli Tepe, and were Khufu and Khafre's pyramids built at the same time. And to be fair, Magli notes exactly this in the introduction to his paper, saying that is a first, admittedly highly speculative attempt at a possible explanation of the reason for the recently discovered mysterious void in the Great Pyramid on the basis of the funerary beliefs of the epoch. In doing so, Magli references architectural elements within the Great Pyramid, quote, which are purely symbolic, related only to the ideas on the afterlife, such as the 4 so-called air shafts that emanate from 2 of the pyramid's chambers, and the descriptions of the afterlife that can be found in the Egyptian funerary documents known as the pyramid texts. Magli points out that one particular passage from the pyramid text references an iron throne as being part of the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. So this is a quote from the text. "The doors of the sky are open for you. The doors of Nut are thrown open for you. The doors of the firmament are thrown open for you. Endure, says Isis, in peace, says Nephthys, when they see their brother. Raise yourself, loose your bonds, throw off your dust, and sit on this, your iron throne."
Yep. Well, there's 4 shafts in that description. The doors, plural, of Nut are open for you.
The doors
and
of the firmament.
doors of the firmament are open for you. 4 doors.
Yeah. From this, Magli makes a rather large leap into the idea that this iron throne might sit within the void found in the Great Pyramid. Many other similar utterances are mentioned the same process, and some also specify that the king will sit on the throne after crossing specifically the northern doors, and that a stairway gives access to the throne. For instance, again in PT 536, that's Pyramid Text 536, I think that's line 536, we read, "May the honored ones clap their hands at the stairway of your throne." Observe now that it is not uncommon for objects mentioned in the pyramid text to be documented in the archaeological records. An important example are the instruments mentioned in the opening of the mouth ceremony, a forked knife, an adze, a serpent-like knife, which are all known archaeologically. May the Iron Throne have been a real object in Khufu's burial equipment. If Khufu's Iron Throne is really located in the newly discovered chamber, it was put in place during the construction of the pyramid and never accessed since. It may well be located at the central end of the void, which, according to the prospection, lies directly on the vertical axis from the apex of the pyramid, crossing the end of the Great Gallery, the so-called Big Step, in the Queen's Chamber underneath. The chamber might thus be a non-functional copy of the Great Gallery, with an ascending staircase and throne at the uppermost end. Magli also suggests that Khufu's spirit might have been meant to access this chamber via the symbolic door found at the end of the northern lower air shaft first explored by Rudolf Gantenbrink, as it may be connected with the lowermost end of the sealed chamber. As for perhaps the most eye-catching part of the headline, Magli notes that if the throne was made of iron, it would have been iron from a meteorite that was used, as this was the source of iron in ancient cultures until the invention of iron smelting. For more on this topic, see our previous articles, Ancient Egyptians Mined Iron from Space, and King Tut was buried with a dagger of extraterrestrial origin. And Magli suggests that it might look similar to the gold sheet throne of Khufu's mother, Hetepheres, except lined with iron sheets. All in all, the paper is constructed out of what?
I have a lot of problems with that idea.
All in all, the paper is constructed out of a large number of speculations piled on top of each other. Oh, wow. Stacks
of assumptions.
A fun topic for sure, and one that I find extremely interesting and worth speculating about, but probably not publishing officially as a paper, and certainly not one that should have been used as the source for major media coverage.
Meteor coverage.
Major meteor coverage. So I remember Hawass saying something about that too, about how he thought that they may find the Iron Throne of Khufu on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
But going back to your idea, or the idea that the pyramid was cased multiple times, that some earlier structure was cased, that the picture that I have in my mind of them drilling through and seeing this rough stone on the other side, I'm kind of wondering about that. Like, you have to keep in mind that we're still looking at this crazy angle, right? So this picture of this rough stone, the backside of some rough stone on the other side, but there's a void there, right? So it's very strange for me. I'm trying to picture how that would work. But I don't know what the exterior of the shafts look like on the exterior of the pyramid. So like, because of the way the shaft block structure is tilted, if that was on the original old pyramid, or let's say you removed most of the casing stones of the old pyramid so that you could build your new one onto it without having a major structural issue of your entire new pyramid wanting to slide off the old pyramid, right? So you remove a lot of the casing stones and then you sort of stack your new pyramid exterior part on top of that. The pictures of Gantenbrink sort of standing around on this, there's a platform where the shaft blocks come out. Okay. So maybe that's what it is. There's just a small void there where they were kind of building around where the old shaft exited. And you could have left whatever original ceilings block was in the end of the shaft without leaving all the casing stones on the pyramid itself.
Yeah.
Or they may have built that door, quote unquote, specifically. Like when they moved their casing stones, they also uncovered the shaft and they had to seal it by sticking something in there that was symbolic, and that's why the seals were on the other side.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No one knows.
But I think that a good way to do this is to look at the greater status of all the structures around it, right? Because whatever it is, you can't view the Great Pyramid in isolation. It isn't isolated. There are other enormous pyramids right next to it. There are smaller satellite pyramids that are, there's 3 over here and there's 3 over there, or whatever, in that alignment. And then there's of course, the mastabas. Then there's the Osiris shaft or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's the big chambers where the boats were buried in, quote unquote, boats buried, soul boats. And then, of course, the
Crane tracks.
The what? The what?
The crane tracks. Yeah.
Crane tracks.
That's where the crane tracks.
Yeah, the crane. Yeah, the crane sockets. Yeah, crane tracks.
Crane tracks.
And then there's the causeways.
Can I have this?
Yes, the causeways, and the Valley Temple, Sphinx itself.
Yeah, I agree. You can't look at it in isolation, but
everyone wants to.
yeah, it's just like the only thing I've been looking at for a while.
But I guess as far as I can tell, that's about all of the data that I've been able to pull up without getting Gantenbrink's CAD files and being able to look at his CAD drawings, which I think there must be something wrong with his website, which is not surprising. It's very old.
So the other idea, like comes to mind when you're saying not to look at the pyramid in isolation, is the preservation of the knowledge, the accumulated knowledge of mankind, or whatever,
Yeah.
the intelligent beings on the planet.
Yeah.
So you have this Sphinx. It's obviously a symbolic carving structure, yet it might hold something more, right? There's chambers underneath.
Right.
So there's this combination of, architecture, beauty, artwork, along with some function
Yeah.
that seems like the purpose of which seems paramount to the culture that was, engaging in these endeavors.
Yeah.
So a power plant is a great idea because that is a type of endeavor that a culture would engage in that has a very important purpose.
Yeah. That everyone can benefit from, and thus
Right.
a large scale effort would be
plausible.
right.
Another plausible thing would be, a library of sorts. You would, under certain circumstances, perhaps knowing the possibility of destructive forces far beyond your ability to prevent,
Yeah.
that you might engage in some activities such as building massive pyramids.
Yeah.
And then
Arcs.
have artistic works integrated into the process, mathematics integrated into the process, so that the whole thing, no matter what part of it was destroyed, if the casing stones were all gone that you carved all the texts into, you might still discover some knowledge about the architecture and mathematics and whatever engineering expertise of the people. If the Sphinx itself crumbled, you would still have this pit, this enclosure that would be less. It would be harder to destroy it.
Yeah.
Also give you an idea of the antiquity of the thing.
Right.
And that there might be something underneath.
Yeah.
Then you would have the blocks that you took out of the enclosure that you built this other massive temple with that might preserve some other. So it's like no matter where you go, and then the tunnels that lead from this thing to that thing and this and that. It's like, you can look at it both ways, like power plant type idea that benefits the society now, or repository of knowledge that benefits all societies as long as you could possibly make it do so.
Yeah.
Which would lead you to these crazy engineering feats, that seem ridiculous when you're thinking about just like one maniacal ruler that's like, yeah, I just like throw my freaking corpse in there.
Yeah.
It's retarded. I mean, seriously.
I mean, yeah, they're the idea that there's some kind of pharaonic ascension, I do think that is extant in the text, that there's all this talk, but it's hard to tell
if that's metaphor.
Right.
And also if that's quant stuff too.
Yes. Them quant stuffing something much older.
Yeah, which is, and we talked about this in a previous podcast where you could see how the idea of this idea of preservation is quant stuffed into like, oh, you mean we can live forever if we preserve ourselves?
Yeah.
And it was really a large, like you're thinking, the initial idea is like, hey, we need to preserve our knowledge so that our species can live on forever.
Yeah.
We're trying to, break free of these forces that will destroy us, right? So that you can see how that could be interpreted to this idea of death, where it's like, well, I need to break free of the forces that are destroying my body and therefore build this massive pyramid and stick myself in there and dry myself out and, make sure there's, nothing desecrates my corpse.
Drop my corpse in a pool of mercury after wrapping me in toilet paper. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can see how that much later cultures showing up and seeing these things and starting to do their own research like way long ago, when perhaps they were obviously an enlightened group of people.
Yeah.
And they may have been enlightened in part by what they found in this area and learned from it, and they learned this idea, but at the same time they're interpreting ancient texts as we are today, and saying, what the hell were these guys talking about?
Right.
They obviously were geniuses based on what we found of their, like physical structures and stuff they left behind. Something to study and something to learn from. And so we find all these things and we're trying to interpret them, and we're interpreting them the best we can. Other people interpret them differently and we get insights from it. So it's like they might have had the same situation going on, and some of them are like, obviously this is like, the quest for immortality.
Yeah.
And that becomes sort of the popular way of looking at what they had found. And so they go restoring all these ancient sites, and then while learning from them, use the same language or a modern, a more modern version of the language to write their story.
Yeah.
And then start engaging in the same types of activities, because obviously whoever built this stuff, you want to emulate them.
Yeah.
As you can see, many, many cultures did over thousands of years when they came into contact with Egypt.
Yeah.
You can look at language in general and see how, these cultures that had no written language would then start trading with Egypt, and then suddenly they would start creating their own alphabets and whatever, and start pulling words that, they had no prior need for this word.
Right.
But they come into contact with Egypt and they start learning all this stuff, and then, they need a word for that.
Yeah.
That same concept that they've never had before in their lives. So you can see how they start adding more characters, and some of the characters are real similar to the Egyptian character for that thing. So you can follow this path of emulation of all these cultures to this incredibly ancient source of knowledge. And yet all these cultures have different ways of interpreting it. So it's not hard to see that the original people that may have come and found what was there, that they did the same thing.
Yeah. The other thing that we have to remember is that, for a long time, there was no translations of the hieroglyphs.
That's right.
We had all these papyrus and all these carvings in these various temples or whatever they are, mortuary temples of this guy or that guy, this pharaoh, that pharaoh. And we could see them all over the place, but nobody knew how to translate them.
Right. Because the old translator was hidden over here. Somewhere in New York.
That's right. The frickin' special...
Yeah, the special translating armor.
Yeah.
You put this breastplate on and this helmet.
Yeah.
And you can translate.
You can comprehend this written language.
Oh, that's total BS. Well, guess what, folks? Google is making one of those.
Right. But they eventually found the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
And this is what I was getting at. Up until the Rosetta Stone, we had no way to translate. But the Rosetta Stone had Demotic Greek, Ancient Greek, and hieroglyphs on it. And they all said the same thing, supposedly.
Right.
We don't even know. I mean, what if the hieroglyphs says something totally different?
And
all of our translations are totally bullshit, right? But the point is that the Rosetta Stone was Hellenistic, from the Hellenistic period.
Yeah.
After Alexander the Great took over Egypt, basically. So, at minimum, we're talking about thousands of years later than some of these texts we're trying to read with that same translation. What language stays the same for thousands of years? None. I mean, just go try to read Old English from freaking 1600s. It's almost impossible. And I can read English really well. I'm I can barely comprehend what the hell they're talking about, So you imagine thousands of years from now, somebody trying to read something that was written now in English using an English translation from there. It just doesn't. So the translation of the text, and then there's the pyramid text, for example, or the Edfu building texts, where the scribes themselves were writing into stone things from the ancient documents that were falling apart that they didn't understand, that they say, we don't really know what this is talking about. We don't even know what some of these symbols mean anymore.
Right.
These are ancient Egyptians. In the Edfu library, which later was a structure that was used for thousands of years, and at some point was a stable and had horse manure in it, and then later on it was a campsite for who knows how many people, and it was just filled with refuse or whatever. But a long time ago it was something else, and for a while it was a library, and the scribes that were in there tried to preserve some of the documents that they had that were so old at that time that they were falling apart, and they couldn't read them really. They were just directly trying to copy the symbols, and they didn't understand what they said.
Yeah.
So you imagine that we're using this Rosetta Stone translation of these hieroglyphs on stuff that's old, and those people may have been copying older things. It's just
Yeah. We don't really know.
We have no idea. Yeah.
We have words that we use everyday English words that we don't really freaking know what they mean. We just have modern connotations.
Yes.
I mean, like that's why I love etymology. You start looking back through the same word and how it's changed, its meaning has changed and evolved over all this time.
Right.
And that you have to think, well, first of all, every single alphabetical symbol had multiple layers of meaning.
Yeah.
So this is what begat the combination of the symbols into a word, which was supposed to give you some more complex idea of something, or say more specific, as opposed to these general ideas that each character represented.
Right.
So you get the word, and now it's a more specific idea, but it's a combination of all these other multi-layered, generalized concepts, and then you put those together in sentences, and then you can further be further specific about whatever you're saying.
Yeah.
It's on and on and on. But we lose after, just freaking 20 years of these words coming up. And they're like, people like making sort of, how a word sort of can change its meaning. And now we're using the word as this joke. But the joke becomes so like a popular meme, for example, that becomes the new meaning of the word from then on.
Yeah.
And in 100 years, nobody's going to, you have to do a lot of research to figure out, well, this word originally meant this, but then it was used as a joke in this way that became extremely popular. And then now that's what the word means.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah.
So it's...
yeah.
It's
Language evolves.
Yeah, it's impossible to know that any of our translations of these things. This is why I love to read ancient texts and try to wipe the slate clean of.
Yeah,
there's a couple of different ways to do it.
And I mean, you could see that the Egyptians, at least the ones that were putting the inscriptions on stuff, were trying to do this. They were illustrating their texts as well.
Yeah.
So you have like millions of characters. Tiny characters, but next to them are these large images also.
Right.
And we look at the images and like, why is that guy wearing a bowling pin hat?
There's probably some nerd that was like, trust me, this is a brilliant way to convey our ideas to the future, no matter what language they have.
Right. Exactly.
And then we're like, what the Nobody knows what they're talking about.
Right. And that's why, I think of the project, there's the project of, how do we tell future generations, they're 10,000 years down the line, how do we warn them away from our radioactive waste?
Yeah.
And they had this big project of how can so we build this chamber deep beneath the earth, right? This stone chamber, and then we have these sealed doors all around it, and then we've got these giant carved warnings into the side. I'm like, no one's gonna believe you, whatever it says.
No. What's gonna happen is a couple of British guys are gonna go blow a hole in that
right,
wall.
and they're all gonna die. People are gonna be like, it's not a curse. Oh my god.
That's right.
Even though all the symbols seem to say that there's a curse, and if you open this, you're gonna die.
The locals be like, no, sir. It's a curse. It probably. Oh, Papa Gosh.
Yeah, Papa Gosh.
Give me the dynamite.
Balderdash.
All right, you take the plunger.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it says.
Come on, Skibby, let's go in the hole now.
Yeah. I just, once you study ancient stuff enough in archaeology, you understand that no one's going to believe whatever your carvings say.
That's right.
They're going to think it was spiritual, superstitious bullshit.
So what we should do really is put the big chamber in there full of all the radioactive waste.
Yeah.
And then we start putting all the seals in, right?
Yeah.
But before that, we just put a bunch of dirt and just make it look as natural as possible. Then we start putting seals in, and we put this massive chunk of amazing gold and just put a dead body in there and just all that stuff, and then put all the seals as don't go in.
Yeah. So they get to the gold and the dead body and they're like, we found it.
Yeah, that's right. And then they're done.
They never
no
get to
more research, right? And there will be all these freaking nerds like us that are like, there's more in there.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll do these freaking quantum scans and they're like, I think there's another void. And all the freaking skirtards.
We already know what it is. Yeah, we found the golden freaking sarcophagus of the. Yeah,
the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it.
So you think that's what it is? We're going to get into this scam pyramids void and find radioactive waste.
That's right.
Right. That's what
we're
it was.
we're really going to release.
We're really going to release the curse of the pharaoh.
That's right.
Oh man.
Yeah. Johnson forgot to put the freaking corpse in the box before they sealed it off. It was his job. Golly.
Man, don't give that job to Johnson. Oh man.
Look, Johnson, there's a corpse wrapped in toilet paper over there. Just put it in the box and come back out.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnson, there's a corpse wrapped in toilet paper in the third barn. Go get it and put it in the box.
Yeah.
God. Oh man.
All right.
We about done?
Yeah.
I think we're done. That's a good follow-up episode. I wanted to get the rest of the story out on that. So
Yeah.
just remember there's a Johnson on every job. So yeah, you're going to find imperfections in any structure no matter what. So you guys can... Let me pull
I want to give a shout out first to
Oh, yeah.
to the C Word podcast.
Yeah.
Dudes.
Dudes.
Dudes. I can't imitate you guys yet, but I'm
Yeah,
working.
we're going to work on it. Yeah.
So you guys are badass. C Word podcast, folks, check it out. I listened to the two most recent episodes and they're great. And I
Yeah, the
laughed my ass
Y2K
off.
episode and the Atlantis episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I laughed my ass off. So it's good stuff. There was one part where you guys gave us a shout out. It was totally awesome, and I really appreciate it. And you mentioned somebody. I don't know y'all's names yet, so somebody mentioned that
One of you guys.
One of you guys mentioned that Brothers of the Serpent would be a freaking wicked badass
Like
death metal band.
Death metal band name. Yeah. Sounds like they would be like smoking blunts and ripping it in Drop C or something like that.
That's freaking genius. Our first album is going to be called River of Metal. It's about a train.
That's right.
No, but I want to tell you that we don't play death metal, but we do play rock and roll.
Yeah.
So check out the rock and roll band is called $50 Dynasty, and you can find a couple albums out there and a few other releases on iTunes, and
CD Baby.
CD Baby is our distributor. You can get them from there, but also they're on Spotify. You can stream them and stuff. You don't have to go buy them. But the Prisoner EP is there's Kings and Thieves, which is our oldest album, and then the Prisoner EP is newer, much better quality, and then the most recent thing we did was just a dual song release, sort of like an A-side, B-side single, On Down the Road.
Yeah.
So check those out. Check them out.
It's not death metal, but it's definitely rock and roll.
Yeah, it's rock and roll. Check it out. And
You can, the website is $50dynasty.net.
or .com, either one. We got them
Yeah.
both. But yeah, so all this music, the bumper music is like random techno that I make whenever I'm like going on a road trip or something. I bring my computer and just like make some techno.
Yeah.
And then a lot of other just, just unfinished material that I'll just come into the studio and on the weekends and just like start throwing down on something. So I like to actually, now that we have the podcast, I actually focus on making bumper music, and I'll call up some of my buddies. One of them he's freaking badass on the bass. So I like the funk song at the end of the podcast. And I'm like, bro, let's lay down some funky bumper music, dude. Call him up. He'll come visit off of his hill.
Yeah.
Come on over to my hill. We'll lay down some funky shit. But yeah, check out $50 Dynasty. Anywhere music can be found.
That's right. And all of you listeners out there, check out the C Word. They are awesome. And you can find them on Twitter at CWordPod.
Yeah. Great. Hilarious podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for the shout out too. That was badass.
Yeah, that was really cool to hear that.
And I love the concept of the podcast too. That's the other thing I think is genius is like the main guy, again, I'm bad with the names, but he's like, I'm all into conspiracies. And so I've done all this research on this conspiracy, and then I'm going to invite my friends over, and they have no idea what I'm going to talk about, and they're going to sit at the table, and he's going to try to convince them that all this conspiracy is true. Real shit.
It's genius. So we kind of do the same thing. Like we have this back and forth ongoing deal of like, I'm doing some research on something, and I'm like starting to blow my mind with it, and I'm like, do I tell Kyle about this? Or do I just do it on the show and blow his mind on the show? So I keep it secret from him. And so I'm like, all right, bro, check this out. And he has no idea what I'm talking about. We get down here and he's like, what's the topic? And I'm like, okay, check this out. Bam. And then I blow his mind. Sometimes we will tell each other what we're looking into, and so we can do it that way. But
I try to do the same thing. And then oftentimes I'm like, I get freaking deep into the rabbit hole, and I'm like, I need help. So I'll spill the beans. Like, this is what I'm thinking, man.
So we'll bounce stuff off of each other before the show sometimes, but sometimes we save it, wait, and blow the guy's mind on the show. It's cool. So everybody check out the C Word. They are awesome. And I forgot to give a shout out to Where Did the Road Go last time when I was giving shout outs to podcasts. Where Did the Road Go is awesome. We follow them on Twitter. You can find them on Twitter as well. And I've been listening to them for years, and they are great, along with Grimerica, Mysterious Universe,
Mike and Maurice's
Mind Escape. Check them out as well.
Yeah, I just checked out. I just listened to the most recent episode of Mike and Maurice's too, and I'm gonna go through all y'all's libraries and just check all y'all's stuff out. I like Mike and Maurice. They're funny to me too. It's great. But I was kind of focusing on the C Word podcast right now. I'll get through y'all's stuff.
Yep.
Don't you worry. But, thank all of you guys.
Yeah, thank all of you guys so much, and we are very gratified to be connected with you guys on Twitter. It's awesome. Yeah. So you can get a hold of us.
Great conversation going on out there.
You can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Comment there. There's the encyclopedia and the glossary.
That's right. Follow us on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS.
And please share the shows. Really helps us out. Trying to spread the word here.
That's right. And you can hit the donate button on the website to donate to our pyramid scheme, which is a scheme to send us straight to pyramids.
Because damn it, we need to get
to pyramids. It's obvious.
And thank you all who have donated.
Yes.
And we are going to be coming up with. We're working on a scheme for the people donating to give you extra content.
That's right. Sort of a Patreon idea.
That you'll actually like.
Yeah. Content that'll be actually, you might want to pay for it. Yeah. It'll be a deal. It'll be a good deal. So we're working on that, like a sort of Patreon style thing. We don't know if we're going to go Patreon yet, but the idea of like donating and getting special content, we're working on that. So look forward to that in the near future.
Yeah, and reviews also help. So that's akin to donating.
That's right.
Spread the podcast.
That's right.
Give us reviews. 5 stars, even if you hate it.
That's right.
You can write terrible review, but 5 stars.
I hate this 5-star podcast. And also, last but most certainly not least, History Shift, Brandon Ricks, who has been immensely helpful to us. We met him on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @HistoryShift. He has a blog now, historyshift.blogspot.com. And he also has a YouTube channel where he has been posting videos about Atlantis, and he has a whole library of other people's videos that you can check out. But this guy has been basically taking all of our podcasts and the pictures that we put in the show notes and turning them into YouTube videos and posting them for us on YouTube and organizing them in our YouTube channel. And he's basically running our YouTube channel, and he is just so amazing. God, just thank you so much, bro. We love you. And hope to meet you someday. I think it will happen. So anyway, everybody check him out. History Shift. Check out his blog. Check out his YouTube page. And thank you so much, bro, for all the work you've been doing for us. We can't thank you enough. And also all of you listeners.
But thanks.
We can't thank you enough, but thanks.
But thanks, Red.
But thanks. Seriously. And all of you listeners, of course, we love you so much.
We love you. Thank you
very much. That's right. Good night, Adamu.
Get
back to work.